Despite political tensions across the Taiwan Strait, Taiwan entrepreneurs continue to launch startups on the Chinese mainland. What's the status of cross-strait business climate? And our Spring Festival special series, Speaking Volumes, continues with another must-read recommendation. Welcome to The Point. I'm Li Xin. Cross-strait relations have witnessed increased political tension since Tsai Ing-Wen took office in Taiwan in 2016. She refused to accept the 1992 consensus, which endorses the One China principle. However, at the same time, non-governmental people-to-people changes have never ceased. And in fact, bilateral trade increased by over 11% last year. So, more importantly, with the introduction of a series of favorable policies on the mainland, a wave of young Taiwanese talents have come across the strait to launch new businesses here. So what business possibilities are they spotting on the Chinese mainland? For more on that discussion, we have one such entrepreneur, Chung, and also Gregory Yingnien Tsang, a current affairs commentator. Welcome to the studio, gentlemen. Mike, tell us a bit about your adventure here on the Chinese mainland. In which area is your business? When did you start and how is it doing?
Yeah, actually we are doing the traditional culture in a startup sector. Yeah, and we.
What do you mean you're doing traditional culture?
We're doing like 24 solar terms, like zodiac.
Okay.
Yeah, and also come back with the horoscope, these kind of things. Yeah, and doing in like in WeChat and in application. Yeah, and make it like more interesting in the application internet this time. Yeah.
What would you call your company then? What do you provide? You provide a kind of prediction to a future, reading your fortunes on a digital way. What is it?
Yeah, it actually is definitely in a digital way. Yeah, we read the like ancient Chinese theory, from some old book, and then put in to the coding and into the program. And our program called Taotaoxi, which is in the mobile application and WeChat. Yeah, and we do some like future telling. And like some zodiac culture, yeah, related to the people's personality.
How long have your business been in being?
So far, it's like more than 2 years, around 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And how has it been growing?
It's booming, especially now is the Spring Festival period. Yeah, actually, it's our the busiest time in the whole year. Yeah, like people like urgent to know like the next year's stuff, these kind of things.
Sure, yeah. People will be checking their fortunes for the next year. But what made you want to come to the mainland to start your business? In Taiwan, what were you doing?
I wasn't doing this traditional culture. That's because go back to 2015, one of the internet company from China called Master, they hold a competition in Taiwan, a startup competition. And at that moment, we only got the idea and PowerPoint. We were trying to do the poll reading on mobile. Yeah, and we think like poll reading related to dating or to like romance or love, yeah, should be a good market. Yeah, this kind of idea, and we won the competition, and they invite us to come to Beijing to have the market survey. So we've been to like Baidu, like Jingdong, this kind of internet company. So after that, we think this market should be like lots of demand over here. So we quit our old job and come.
Has the business environment changed since you won that competition? Because of the political tension we all know about.
Not really have a big change for us, because we come to here just like by ourselves. Yeah, we are not represent to anyone. Yeah, so not a huge impact for us.
Gregory, what is your impression upon hearing the story of Mike? Does it come as something new, or are you surprised by any factor of his story, of his experience?
I think this is a beautiful example of people, young men from Taiwan, having innovative ideas and using the market potential of mainland China to develop the business. So this is the going trend. As you know, commerce is the thing to stay. It's not a new stuff. It's provided a particular satisfaction to people in all different areas. For example, suppliers and also the customers on the end. So this business, for example, is a good indication that if you have an edge, a particular angle to cut in, not only you will survive but also grow stronger. So this is encouraging to see it's happening the way it is.
And it seems that business relationship across the strait have not been so adversely impacted by the kind of political tension that we're seeing.
You're absolutely right. For example, Taiwan has limitations because its territory, its population, so its financial and human resources are limited, and the areas are small. On the other side, across the Taiwan Strait, you have mainland China, a big territory, resources, marketing potentials. So even if Tsai Ing-Wen in charge in Taiwan, she would not purposely to promote trade as such, but people in Taiwan would have their own choices. They vote for, use their feet to come to mainland China. So this is complementary, because China has the conditions and the environment to assist businessmen, entrepreneurs from Taiwan to grow further. So the political influence is minimal. I don't think it would stop the trend of having even greater development in the future.
Yeah. Has it been easy doing, opening up your business here on the mainland?
For me, for our team, it's not easy, because
not easy.
The internet system is totally different than Taiwan, and the administration, the business administration, all the rules is quite different. So we took a little bit time to try to warm up, to pick up.
But eventually, have you gotten over the initial period of difficulty, and now you are? Which stage are you at this moment?
Yes, we took the investment from the angel and from the VC, and right now we are in we call A circle, and try to A round to try to take the next investment.
Yeah, and I guess the attractiveness of the mainland to you is the huge market. Besides that, how do you look at the advantages of the mainland market compared to elsewhere? I guess you could start your business somewhere else as well, for this kind of product, maybe in a foreign country, in Canada, in the United States, where there are a lot of where there are a lot of Chinese immigrants. You could also have a good business.
Yeah, we all know our traditional culture is for Chinese people, and quite a lot Chinese people in overseas. But when you look down the population in the market, probably I would say American and China is the two biggest market in the world. And in terms of the business we're doing, like Zodiac or 24 Terms, so we pick up we come to China to do the business. I think should be the best choice. But the things you mentioned, for the overseas Chinese people, that might be our next step.
Might be the next step. And are there more? Do you know many friends or other people who are doing the same thing that you were doing? The business, the community of Taiwanese business people here on the mainland.
Yes, actually, we have a small group like Taiwanese young people come to here doing the startup scenes. Some is doing the activity program. Some is doing the food dating. So we have a small amount of Taiwanese young people over here and doing the startup.
What's the general expectation, the sentiment among this group of people coming to the mainland?
Of course, we are expecting the population, and most of us doing the startup, so it's related to the mobile device, and the market, and try to occupy the biggest market share in the world.
Are they worried? Is there any concern about political relationship across the strait?
Yes, some of the people is a little bit, but we try to focus on the economy side and related apart from the political side. Yeah.
So the uncertainty is not big enough to topple your dream of startup on the mainland?
So far, yes.
So far, so good. Gregory, what I have noticed is the Taiwanese Affairs Office of the State Council and the Ministry of Commerce are rolling out some cooperation zones between the mainland and Taiwan in central and western China. For instance, in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region or in Sichuan Province. What do you think are the considerations behind that?
I think these policies are marvelous because, for example, China has to have a evenly development. You cannot have the coastal provinces, for example, from Shandong and Jiangsu and Zhejiang and Guangdong to develop. You need to move the industries, the business opportunity inland. For example, I know that the industrial zone will be set up in Sichuan, in Guangxi, and already quite a few existed for Huzhou and so on. So these facilities would certainly serve many purposes. Number one is to attract the people in those vicinity to stay right there instead of traveling to the coastal metropolitan cities and during the Spring Festival have to rush back. And second, you need something concrete to really to have the roots in to bring in real growth for the people in that area. So by this diversification of having these facilities moving inland and having encouraged, for example, the Taiwanese entrepreneurs, the business to go there, is a very, very interesting idea, and it's a necessity to do things like that.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead to 2018, the year of the dog, what kind of expectations can we have for the overall environment or atmosphere across the strait? Do you see any possibility that the political relationship would improve so that, you know, more people-to-people exchanges can be further boosted?
Well, overall, in the long run, I'm quite optimistic. I think the trend of having China united in the future, who knows when, but in the future is a must. So the temporary interference, for example, on the Taiwan side, with Tsai Ing-Wen in charge of DPP, will not go forever. For example, she will be tested this end of the year, this mayor's election, and 2 years from now, the general election. So if she continues taking the position she's taking right now, for example, to reject One China principle and ignore 1992 consensus, I think this would be read by the voters in Taiwan as something unacceptable. But again, I think China has to look at China has to look at the larger picture. Do not be angered or disrupted by the things taken by Tsai Ing-Wen administration in a short run. But in the long run, I commend China for everything possible to attract, for example, people from Taiwan to come to China to invest and give them the best condition there is, those policies to support them, so people would see for themselves what is the best for them. The best for them is a united China in the long run.
Mike, what is your expectation for the year 2018, the biggest wish, the biggest worry?
Of course, I want like more and more my friend can come to visit China or even like do the business over here, and I always like share my own experience. Yeah, like even you mentioned like a little bit like some roles is like quite different before, but I think it's this place and this market is really like worth for people to love it. Yeah, so for 2018, I would like to like hope more and more people can come to my friend, come to China. Yeah.
Could I one point?
Absolutely.
To support the reason, for example, for Taiwan entrepreneurs come to China. One thing is very important: have the same language, the same cultural background. If you go to India or anywhere else, for example, even if you use English, it's a different story. Another thing is the basic of this business. You talk about fortune telling, you know, and so on. Chinese customers accept it readily. You don't have to create a need in foreign countries to have that go. So all these things combined, then there are enough interchange now across Taiwan Strait, cultural exchanges, cultural events, and tourism. So the foundation is strong. So based on this foundation to grow.
Basically, that's why Mike can have your business on the mainland, because we have the same traditional culture, right?
Indeed.
Just to wrap up, what is the fortune for people who are born in the year of the rabbit? Can I look forward to good things? Anyway, thank you
Yes,
very
of
much.
course. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Mike Chung, a Taiwanese entrepreneur who is investing on the Chinese mainland, and as always, Gregory Yingnien Tsang, a current affairs commentator. You have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about another must-read recommendation for your Spring Festival holidays. Stay with us. Turning now to Speaking Volumes, The Point Special 2018 Spring Festival section. Now, during this special section, we will be inviting several guests, we have indeed, to share their favorite books. Each one of them will start by reading a few lines before we move into a short discussion. Joining me today with great pleasure is His Excellency, the Syrian Ambassador to China, Imad Moustapha. Your Excellency, thank you very much for sharing with us your insight into books. How often do you read?
I am an avid reader, a book rat, so I read continuously, non-stop.
Mm-hmm. And one book at a time, or what's your habit?
No, my habit usually is to read 2 books in parallel. One would be usually completely different from the other. Mostly one would be fiction or literature, the other would be non-fiction.
How interesting. So they complement each other.
Yeah,
it's like a mental exercise.
And I shift between
You
both
shift
books,
between them. Yeah, sometimes that's also an interesting way of jumping, books hopping, let's say.
Yeah.
So what are you going to recommend to us today?
Well, you know, I cannot recommend a book. For me, all books are like my hidden mistresses. I cannot favor one of them. But I'll just pick a book that I have just recently completed, and or a couple of books, and I can discuss either one of them with you. I have with me here a novel by the now very famous Elena Ferrante, who is really a pseudonym for the writer. Nobody really knows
Do you want to show
the name
out
of this very famous Italian writer
My
who has
Brilliant...
becoming my brilliant friend, who has become an international renowned writer now. But she's a very interesting writer. But probably this is not the book I would like to discuss right now. The other book that I have just completed, which is a really impressive, massive book, is The Modern Mind, written by Peter Watson. This book is amazing because I have to admit, Peter Watson amazed me with his encyclopedic knowledge of what has happened in the brain of humanity in the 20th century.
Wow.
In this book, he goes through every achievement of the human mind, whether it's in art, philosophy, physics, mathematics, rocket science, biology, politics, psychology. It's amazing. And he discusses everything in depth, in clarity, and in a most wonderful way, and he makes the connections. So it's not like you are reading an encyclopedia in which each entry is completely separated from the one above.
Yeah.
And this is really a dazzling work, because it's difficult to read because of the enormous amount of information contained in it, and because it is presented in a condensed form. But the wonder of it is that it takes you through a journey through 100 years of the human mind. And it's amazing, and it makes you believe in the inner goodness of humanity.
Do you want to pick a few lines to read to us now?
That's difficult, but I will try. I will try to pick. This really has been picked randomly. I did not prepare this in advance. So I open here, and it's about Marcel Proust, the famous French writer. And here he says, Marcel Proust never admitted the influence of Freud, or Darwin, or Einstein. You see how he has just linked a French writer with an Austrian psychoanalyst, with a British genetist, scientist, with a German physicist, Einstein. He is brilliant in these relations. But as the American critic Edmund Wilson has pointed out, Einstein, Freud, and Proust, the first two Jewish, the latter non-Jewish, drew their strengths from their marginality, which heightened their powers of observation. and so on and so on. The book goes on like this.
Marginality. What did that mean? Why do you think this was providing an insight to you?
In many aspects, Peter Watson points out that most of the outstanding and brilliant minds in the 20th century, not necessarily only the 20th century, but this is his scope, are people who were on the margin of society, not in the mainstream. Those usually who are on the margin are more free to think, more reflexive, more original. They do not just follow the crowd. They do not just adhere to the principles that were imposed upon them.
Mm-hmm.
So they are usually more creative. And anyway, the beauty of this book, as I said, really, it gives anyone who is patient enough to read through the 800 pages of this book, it gives a panorama of all human achievements, not in just one single domain or field. Usually intellectuals and scholars today that I usually meet, and I respect a lot, tend to limit their interest to certain scopes.
Right.
They do not like the Renaissance attitude of trying to embrace all
which is more
sciences
difficult by nature. I mean, you have to be able to understand a lot more than focusing on one particular field. Do you think?
But also I agree. I also believe that the human mind is curious by nature also. So all aspects of knowledge should attract his curiosity or her curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think we should limit ourselves to one certain domain or specific discipline. So the beauty of this book that it has successfully interwoven all these disciplines, all these domains, all these fields of knowledge in art, in science, in literature, and in music even. So it is. This is why I have this in my heart, this foible. I like all these human manifestations of creativity,
right.
and this is why I love this book.
The modern mind, but is there an overarching theme, or is Mr. Watson coming to a certain conclusion or some conclusions as to how the modern mind has been evolving, has been developing? I mean, it's 800 pages. I do not know. Is there some kind of theme or a thread going through all of it? Or in other words, what can we take out of it?
He does not try to impose a theory on his reader that, look, this is as you just
how the modern mind
worked and how it has evolved, which is very good. I don't like anyone lecturing me. I like people to guide me gently towards whatever conclusions I might achieve. What he is trying to say is, and this is wonderful, that without the diversity, without the different schools of thought in art, in literature, even in sciences, he focuses a lot that the so-called exact sciences are a myth. It's even when in sciences you can have major disagreements. Einstein, as an example, the father of relativity in physics, completely disagreed with quantum physics, that of Niels Bohr. And now we are talking on exact sciences. You see? What he's trying to say is the most beautiful thing on this earth is the human mind. It's so creative, it's so rich, and it keeps on going on and moving on and exploring unknown realms, unknown universes, and it builds upon what has happened before, but it differs from it, and only by being different it can move forward, but also by knowing it and acknowledging it, it can recognize how to be different and how to move forward. So it's one whole panoply of human creativity, human beauty. This is really about human beauty. The most beautiful thing in the human being is the human mind.
For the past 100 years. Many thanks, Professor. Many thanks, Ambassador Moustapha. I called you Professor.
Well, I was a professor at the University of Damascus prior to becoming an ambassador, so you didn't err.
That's why, because what we talked about somehow brought me into a kind of a academic world of things instead of politics and the usual subjects we talk about. Anyway, thank you so much for bringing us these books and your insight into the world of the human mind, and I'm sure a lot of people will be curious about this book.
It is a nice book.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your insight. That has been Ambassador of Syria to China, His Excellency Imad Moustapha. And that is it for this edition of our special segment, Speaking Volumes. And download the application as usual called CGTN to watch our show on your mobile devices. You can always follow me on Facebook or Twitter using the handle The Point with LX, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN